So dudes, normally I would be getting ready for a stream about new patch, but that's not happening now. Yeah, so this is season delays have happened 2 times in a row now. I don't remember if they happened during Dread Factor. I wouldn't be surprised if I went back and discovered they were. Or before that, I just, at this point, I anticipate season delays. Not necessarily out of pessimism, but just out of realism. And I know a lot of people, you know, they would like me to say certain opinions in response to that thing because I'm a content creator and I am, of course, obligated to have certain kinds of emotional stakes involved when it comes to the video game stuff. And I'm kind of tired of that, and I don't want to talk about it, so I'm not going to. Because I'm not going to say anything that nobody else has already said. So I'm just going to do an attacker tier list for Rainbow Six Siege, Operation Deep Freeze, which is coming to a theater near you. I don't know. We'll find out. Anyway. So RAM, we're going to go from release order in terms of most recently released and then work our way all the way back to the vanilla operators. I want to do this whole thing in one take so that way I'm not going back and forth in Premiere like cut, right? And then I spend a million years working on a video that should take me about, like 2 hours to make. So RAM. I like RAM. I managed to find, before I continue, I managed to find this old template that I did for the tier list back in I think it was Brutal Swarm, and then I just don't know what I did with it, but now I found it again, so that's cool. So a little bit more elaboration on the tiers and what I'm talking about. I like Ram. Ram is not a bad character, and that's something that I stress pretty often. Who's an F tier, I wonder? I surely I can't imagine who that might be. Ram is one of those characters where I think that there are opportunities for her to do something big in the right circumstances. But usually there's going to be other solutions for the same kind of problem that might be able to do it a little bit more efficiently. Namely, Buck and Sledge seem to on paper and in practice cover more scenarios than Ram does. The big thing about Ram is that she's able to work the vertical while she keeps her gun up, and she can work more vertical kind of just in general. I think what ended up happening with the initial version of her on the test server was that people saw just how much ground she could cover on her own. And then that kind of put her in an awkward situation where it was like, okay, we can't just make her replace Buck and Sledge, right? Because then people wouldn't really like that. So they kind of gave her a niche role that I think is still really useful, especially for vertical top-down clears. I didn't see her too often at the Atlanta Major. I saw her a couple of times here and there. She's really good on Bank. She's really good on Consulate. But the main advantage of the gadget is that it works autonomously. You don't have to worry about getting shot. Usually, while you run it, you do kind of have to watch your flanks. But for the most part, it's the whole idea is to put the thing down and then be able to keep your gun up and then work a bunch of vertical autonomously without needing to do a bunch of input. And she is good for that, but it is kind of slow. It is loud. And it does take a lot of different things happening at the same time for it to work 100%. So that's why she's not really brought, all the time. So I said I wasn't going to do everything in multiple takes. And then my power went out because Brava hacked my power grid. So Brava is pretty good right now. She covers a wide range of defender setups. So a lot of your powerful defenders for the TDM meta happen to be trap characters and crowd control characters. So that means that you're going to be relying on disrupting Fenrir, Melusi, Thorn, Capkin, operators like that. Can't really disrupt Legion anymore. So that's kind of a buff that he got recently. But if the defense doesn't have drone denial, Brava can make some pretty decent dents in your setup. If you combo that up with an IQ, it's even better. So not just that, you also got default cameras and you got bulletproof cameras. So those tend to be what you run into the most. Just the ability to mess around with default cameras is a lot for Brava. And just because of that, that elevates her pick rate just a little bit more. She is not an unimportant component of a lot of competitive attacker strats, trying to basically throw a wrench into what the defense has. She's a really fun X factor to kind of fall back on in case you don't really have any more direct options to deal with crap like Twitch or IQ or any kind of explosive characters. That ability to deal with utility without needing an explosive is really nice to have. So because of good guns and because the gadget has a wide range of use case scenarios, Brava is a pretty solid pick. Grim's also a solid pick. I never thought I would say that. So Grim is really good at working vert information gathering. You combo up the Bailiff with the ability for the B canister to bounce off of ceilings. And you can also make holes above and then bounce the canister towards positions that you otherwise would have a difficult time trying to clear. So a good example of this would be Consulate on the middle floor there. You can bounce a B canister towards what used to be pipes. I'm not sure what you would call it anymore. Maybe yellow pillar would probably be the call. But you can bounce the B canister forwards. That keeps you safe, and it allows you to gather information. So the canister does a lot of different things because not only is it good for just pinpointing one particular spot that somebody is at, it also punishes people for taking rotations that they normally would take under the right circumstances. So a good example of this would be any kind of post-plant situation. You can throw B canisters on pretty much every single kind of entryway back into the bomb site for a retake by the defense, and then you will know exactly where they are coming from. You can do this in the middle of a site hit as well. You can do this to basically to punish people for taking the positions that they want. So it's equal parts information gathering and kind of a soft crowd controlling gadget as well. And it works through verticals, so that's super, super cool. There's a lot of neat things you can do with this gadget now after they sped everything up and made it a lot easier to use. He's a pretty solid character, and he actually gets banned not all the time in competitive, but he does get banned in competitive, which is pretty interesting. So Sens is weird. Sens, the problem with Sens is that there's a million different things that have to go right in order for a Sens wall to work in Rainbow Six. So there are some situations. The most recent thing I can think of, and this is a while ago, was a strat where a team brought Sens, and then they used Sens in combination with the Glaz. They had a lineup set up for a church take on Clubhouse. They put the Sens wall covering up blue just pretty much almost completely. And then when they went for the site hit, they had the Glaz in the back playing for the crosses back into the site, playing for the retake situation, which wasn't a bad idea. And in that, 1 in a million circumstance where you know the lineup and you can get things going, go for it. But Sens requires a million things to happen before and after and during the site execute to really get anything out of it. They're kind of a weird entry frag right now, right? They throw their wheelie boys all over the place and they run in with the POF 9, high rate of fire, 50 round mag, and they just go crazy with the 3-speed. But aside from that, it's kind of it's just not a particularly easy gadget to implement, and there's always going to be something else that you can probably use instead. Like, it's nice that they have other options. They're going to have frag grenades in deep freeze, but for the most part, Sens is still just kind of and I don't think that's really going to change much until you make the gadget a little bit easier to use. So Osa hasn't really been getting picked as much recently, so maybe this is just my own bias kind of looking at it, but the thing I like about Osa, and this is just coming from the perspective of a ranked player, even though she's not picked as much in competitive, she still is really, really good for playing out the TDM meta. She is really good in the ranked meta of Rainbow Six. When you have defenders that just peek everything all the time at 1,000,000 miles an hour, any kind of wall open scenario, you can work an Osa into that situation, and you can usually make plays happen. She has EMPs, and she's useful for getting the wall open. You get the wall open, you sit with the shield way in the back, and then you can hit some really crazy shots with the scope on the 5.56. She's really good at that kind of like you know, support backline kind of sniperish gameplay where she uses the shield to her advantage and makes it really difficult for you to take gunfights on your teammates moving into the bomb site. So while not useful, you know, all the time, those scenarios where I'm like, okay, we need to get the wall open. If I'm helping my Thermite get the wall open, I usually play an Osa and then I just kind of back them up and I play for refrag. So yeah. Flores is also an operator you don't really see as much of, but he's still pretty good. He's decent and competitive because any kind of game where you're going to have utility to the extent that you're going to have it in Rainbow Six Siege, an operator like Flores is always going to be pretty useful. You use it to get rid of really entrenched, bunkered out positions. Good example would be Oregon. Good example would be Cafe, right? You throw a bunch of Flores robots into the site, and then you get rid of the setup without having to, you know, directly, you know, have a number of things happen in order for you to do that, like you would with the Brava or like you would with the Twitch. Flores is a lot more, let's say a little bit more direct with his approach to the problem. He gets four of those. Bomb drones, which is like a lot, right? That's not insignificant, and his guns are pretty solid. You bring him when you just see a crap ton of stuff that you want to get rid of. Non-electronic, usually kind of utility. But the problem is that it's really easily countered by Mozzie and Mute. So it's like, right? All you really need to do is bring that, and then it kind of makes things a little bit more difficult. That being said, he is good for dealing with certain kinds of map setups if there's soft walls involved. So everybody dislikes this, right? Every time I do a tier list, everybody gets real agitated when I do this. So the problem with Zero has nothing to do with the fact that they don't have, like, they have good, right? Sam has good utility. Sam has good gadgetry. The camera can be used for a number of interesting kind of really fast and efficient clears. I actually have a video I did not too recently talking about a bank lobby clear with the cameras. Sam is a great solo queue character. But that's the thing about Rainbow Six. In a game like Rainbow Six, where the game is so heavily dependent on team play, the more team play dependent that you get, the less your solo queue characters tend to do in terms of, you know, actual potential that they have. So there's not a lot of situations where Sam is brought in a competitive environment because somebody else can probably just do the same thing and the communication is a lot more efficient. You're usually just going to drone it out. You're going to put a Nomad, you're going to put a Gridlock in the place of what Sam would usually do. So there's not really a lot of situation, and people are more attentive as well and competitive. They're going to hear the camera. They're not going to let, you know, simple mistakes fly, like letting the camera just chill up at the top of the ceiling and not hear the, you know, the beep sound. People are going to be a lot more thorough with the way they play the map. Solus obviously counters the camera, right? So there's a lot of ways to deal with the camera very easily, and the camera also makes a ton of noise and it's easy to spot. That's really the main problem, is that there's just so much counterplay to the camera, and things have to happen in order for the camera to work. That being said, if you can come up with a particular strat to get map control efficiently, if you know some camera placements, I will say that Sam is really good on maps with a lot of open air, right? Like a lot of open sight lines, like bank, windows, consulate, maps where you can, you know, shoot the cameras from outside the building and get some intel going. Sam's really good. But for all the purposes that makes him a good, you know, all the things that make him a good solo queue character don't necessarily make him a great competitive character. And that's usually the point of these tier lists, right? Is to kind of like give you a competitive analysis of these characters and really just kind of get down to the most absolute, like if we are optimizing for like 1,000,000% efficiency, that's the point of these lists. However, for ranked, I would definitely put him like around here. But for the purpose of the tier list, he's not. Okay, Ace, like this isn't really shocking to anybody who's been playing the game in a semi-serious fashion right now. Nobody playing competitive watching this video is going to look at this and be like, yeah, no. And if you are, then I have news for you. Ace is just like, there's no reason. There's a lot of situations where there's just no reason not to bring him. He has an AK-12, which has been nerfed a couple of times over and over again, and it's still like it's a crazy good gun. You know, for a hard breacher to have, it does so much damage. It has a nippy rate of fire. It has a 1.5 times scope on it. I'm honestly not. I'm kind of shocked he still has the 1.5 at this point, considering how hugely dependent he is in the meta right now. Because what you're looking for with the hard breach is that you can do it safely and you can do it efficiently. So he counters bandit tricking because he can throw a bunch of canisters on the wall and he can throw them from a distance, which keeps him safe from C4. The only big counter to ace is that you can shoot the charges. But then again, you can do that with every other kind of hard breach. So at the end of the day, what's the big deal, right? I know that people tend to just, we go in and we gun and screw the wall, but there are still situations where the wall is important. So that being said, if we might as well try to go for the wall, and if the wall doesn't work out, we might as well shoot, then ace is the perfect guy, right? Because if you can't open the wall, then you just shoot with an AK-12. So, that's just kind of how it is. So Iana got hit really hard with the frag grenade change. There are characters that kind of do her job a little bit more efficiently than her. She is pretty much relegated now to like a flex entry. Is that even a thing that exists? I mean, Shaiko was still using her in Atlanta not too recently, but her pick rate has definitely fallen off as a result of the frag grenade changes. They want, I think Ubisoft wants Iana to lean a lot more on her drone centric, like her intel gathering, supposedly intel gathering centric kind of role, and that's just kind of how it is right now. Like, she's not a bad character by any stretch of the imagination, but frag grenades are massive, and losing that much destructive potential that she used to have. When we're talking about entry fraggers, we compare Iana to Ashe, we compare Iana to Zof, and then all of a sudden we start to go, okay, yeah, well, I mean, if we're gonna pick an entry, if we're gonna optimize it, then Iana's not going to get picked, nearly as much. She is good for dealing with Haruni gates because of the clone, though. Callie's another ranked character. If like ranked tier list, she's probably up here a little bit. I do like playing Callie. Callie's a really, really super fun character to play. I love playing Callie. But she's just not a great comp pick most of the time. You might as well bring a Thatcher. You might as well bring secondary EMPs. And the sniper rifle in that kind of environment is kind of clunky and difficult to get leverage out of. Sometimes you can make a strat around her. That's certainly not something that's off the table. Something that I like to do with Callie is I like to get on the piano window repels on Cafe, and I can, depending on how things go, depending on the stuff that we open up, I can hold the crosses all the way from the piano windows onto Heaven and Cocktail Balcony with Callie. So really super, super, super cross map angles. That's where you're going to get the most out of the scope. That's where you're going to get the most out of the sniper rifle. But there's just a lot of situations where, in a really aggressive meta, you need a full auto gun. And her machine pistol isn't bad, but the utility from her gadget is not powerful enough, I think, to justify bringing the sniper and a gun on her secondary that's like, right? So, that's just kind of how Callie works. Fun ranks character, but kind of a gimmick in a competitive environment. All right, so Amaru, the timing operator. That's pretty much what I call her at this point, the timing op. So Amaru is really good at hitting a timing whenever your team is going for an aggressive play. Her ability to be at a certain place on the map faster than anybody else, depending on the situation, is nice to have. She can clear Oregon, Big Tower, for instance, pretty much faster than anybody else on the team, which is not an insignificant thing to do. Time is a resource for attack, and anything that you can do to, alleviate that is not a bad thing. She is good for doing she also has that thrown into the mix and kind of thing where she can, Gara hook through hatches from below, which is nice to have. Kind of the opposite effect of what you would do when you drop for a hatch take for a basement hit. But that's not going to happen all the time. She does have good weapons, but the gadget has, compared to the rest of the competition, it has, limited use case scenarios, and that's why she's not like super, super high. Same thing with Nokk. Nokk's gotten hit over the Nerf bat, gotten hit over the head with the Nerf bat, I should say, a couple of times. Really frustrating how, in my opinion, kind of frustrating how Nokk has been handled in recent memory. I'm not 100% sure why they decided to adjust her sneakiness, her noise output. That just, I still disagree with that change. Many months later, and I think it definitely hit her hard. That being said, there are situations where you can get something out of Nokk by going for, just going for that solo entry, right? Go for that solo entry cross map while your team is doing something. You go for the pincer hit in the back, and then you kind of do the alt take that would normally happen, right? If things didn't work out for the main hit. So Nokk is good for that kind of like risky play on her own, going up a staircase or something like that. I mean, she is still useful for it, but it is kind of frustrating because she doesn't really have that much in terms of utility, and the effectiveness of the play used to be so much stronger comparatively, especially with the sound output. Now she will announce herself no matter what she does, which is kind of, I don't know. I get why they did it, but it did kind of remove a fun aspect of the gameplay loop. And for that reason, I can see why some people were upset. Okay, Gridlock. Gridlock is super, super good right now. So Gridlock has really, really good guns. She's capable of helping open the wall. She can get vertical pressure going with the shotgun. She has flank watch. She can help with the side execute. She can help with the post plant. She does so many different things. She helps out in terms of utility a lot more than other characters, that would supposedly do her job. She's not way up here because she's not going to be brought as much, but her pick rate is still Gridlock's pretty well cemented into the meta right now. And there are plenty of situations where it's okay, let's bring a Gridlock for this. Not necessarily because of one job that she does, but because of the millions of other jobs that she handles pretty okay. And versatility is something that you need in a game like Rainbow Six Siege. So not particularly shocked by that. Now for Nomad and Gridlock kind of, go back and forth. It used to be one of those situations where Nomad was just better than Gridlock for, 90% of the time. The reason that Nomad was better than Gridlock, and the reason that Gridlock now has a bunch of other things that she can do in addition to the flank watch, is because Nomad, if you place the air jab correctly, the defense is not going to have an option in order to deal with it unless they impact grenade it. So because there's a hard angle, right, on a door frame, for instance, the air jab goes here, you can't get an angle on it to shoot it. There's no counterplay. So you have to go around or you have to impact grenade it. Unlike the Gridlock tracks where you can just kind of shoot it, or you can, walk into the tracks if you're crazy, right? But they still make a sound cue. So that was the reason why Nomad was better for a certain period of time. However, there's a little bit more pre-planning you kind of have to go through with Nomad, and you have to make sure that the air jab is positioned correctly. Otherwise, they can shoot it. Little things like that. Gridlock is good, Gridlock, I would say, is easier to play in that aspect, right? You just you go in with your team, you throw the stuff, boom, 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 and then you get things going. Nomad is you kind of have to plan it out a little bit more ahead of time, but she's still really good as well. Oh, and the guns are good too. Maverick, this guy, there's not a lot to talk about. He lost his frag grenades, right? He was the X factor to open the wall, especially during the utility simulator around 2020, 2021. And then he lost his frag grenades, and now opening the wall with the Maverick just isn't something that really happens anymore. I mean, you have secondary EMPs, right? Getting the wall open is so much more efficient than it used to be. And so it's okay, I mean, there are some situations where you can get something out of maybe, making holes in a wall, little Swiss cheese holes. He's good for Oregon attic. I like bringing Mav for the holes on that wall. That's still pretty much in the meta, right? You set up some cross holes to kind of watch in case somebody tries to swing through attic and tarps. But for the most part, pretty limited set of situations where Maverick is good. His gun is good. But yeah, it's just kind of once you did that, once he lost the frag grenades, it was kind of GG, just because of the nature of his gadget and the way that he was implemented in the meta at the time. The internet is out too. So what happens here is when the power goes out, it knocks out the power grid, which is connected to my internet provider, which takes 5 million years to come back up. So I'm actually recording for a video that I can't upload right now. It's kind of like clocking in at work, and then you're not really doing anything. You just kind of, it's I don't know. Is that how that works? I never done a real job, so I wouldn't know. All right, I guess you just clock in at work, and then you just kind of sit around. It's like working retail And then you're like, okay, nobody's coming in today, huh? I mean, I'm technically still getting paid, so it's kind of how I feel right now. I say I never worked a real job, but that's not really true. You know, it's just kind of like an inside joke because, you know, content creator, not a real job. But yeah, I worked at a apple and a peach orchard because that's where I'm from, in case you didn't know. Not a real job. Anyway, so Lion, basically what Lion does, he is good for the really aggressive TDM meta roam clear. I'm tired of a million roamers on the top floor. I want to get in the building. We need to make plays. We need to start making stuff happen. So you bring a Lion. You have the scan. You have... Does he still have the Gon 6? This is your job, isn't it? I think so. What the hell? He has frags. I know he has frags, as a matter of fact, going in a deep freeze. I can't go into Google and look it up because I have no internet. So Lion is good, right? He has destructive utility. He has the scanning ability. He is good from the roam clear. And there's not going to be a lot of situations where the roam clear is bad, right? Name one. Name one. Pretty difficult to do that. Especially maps where there is a lot of ground to cover. Bank, Night Haven being good examples. Big maps. Theme park, right? Not in competitive anymore, but, you know, for ranked at least. You get the idea. You bring a Lion, you track down the Soulless, you take him down, you pinch him, cav, whatever. Lion's good for that. Good for that, as well as the post plant or the site hit if he still has his scanny things up. Finka, like, dude, I know some people love Finka. It's just one of those situations where she doesn't really have like a lot of stuff, right? Like she doesn't have frags anymore. And the gadget is just kind of, like there's some situations where you can kind of get something out of it. Yeah, the health boost is nice if you're doing a very specific kind of like rush strat. She's good for that rush strat. Don't get me wrong. And then everything else is just kind of like, meh. So she's not going to be brought a lot of the time. Her gun is okay, you know, compared to other attacker stuff. It's a lot better on defense where you don't have as many assault rifles on defense, but in terms of attacker weapons, it's like, So, you know, that's just kind of how it is with Finka. Limited use case scenarios, similar to a lot of these characters here. Dokkaebi. Dokkaebi is so good. Dokkaebi has a really good gun. She's honestly the best flank watch in the game, okay? She has amazing gun for that job with scopes, Gon 6, EMPs, great roam clear ability, right? Roam clear ability that you can't really do anything about, by the way, unless you're in the vicinity of a mute jammer. So whereas with Lion, he hits the scanner and then you can stand still. With Dokkaebi, she calls your phone and there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do unless you're in the vicinity of a mute jammer when she calls. That distinction is super, super important. So just because of that guaranteed value that you get with Dokkaebi that you don't get with Lion, she is so good for the roam clear. She is so good for that like initial, you know, early phase of the game. And she's good in the later phases of the game because of the utility destruction and the gun and the flank watch. Really good character right now. The best flex character in the game, in my opinion. More like a flex support. I wouldn't say like necessarily hard flex, but more in the line of like flex. It's a spectrum, okay? Right. Keep it moving. Zof. Okay, so some people aren't gonna like this one. You know, ranked, you can put her up here. But the main reason that she's not really brought in comp is because, well, there's another character we're gonna talk about here pretty soon. I'm sure you can fill in the blank. But with Zof, the thing is that she makes a ton of noise. That, like, the speed change did kind of affect her job in certain respects. She's really loud. She's really loud, and her guns are good. Or her gun and utility combination is good. I guess I'll just say it. Comparing her to Ashe, right? It's just tough. It's a tough comparison because Ashe has, you know, more gunfighting flexibility with the movement. Her gun is still really good. Ash's gun is really, really good. And she can just make plays more quickly, right? And Zof is loud and slow. So that's kind of, you know, Zof is a good second entry, not so much direct entry like she used to be. So she's good, but just, you know, it's tough to put her in this kind of, you know, in this bracket. But when I look at her compared to other characters, it's like, I get it. I get why she's not picked as much. At least in competitive. And ranked, you know, have fun with the M762. She's really fun, at the very least. I like the gun a lot. Ying. Ying gets banned in competitive so freaking much, dude. And there's a really good reason for that. Ying is just the map control operator, right? Like, you bring a Ying and you're like, I don't give a crap. I don't give a crap about your setup, your positioning, whatever. Like, I want this part of the map. I am going to throw a million flashbangs at it, and this is mine now. There's not really a lot of counterplay unless you bring a Warden, right? Or a Jaeger or a Wamai. You have to pretty much allocate stuff to deal with the Ying, and that's what makes it such a pain in the ass. Plus, her gun is good, and it has a big magazine. So it's like, she's just really good at that, right? She's like, I want this map control. Get the hell out of my way. And there's really not a lot you can do about it, aside from ban her in competitive. So that's why she has a super high ban rate in competitive, because she's just like, she's like borderline OP. I don't even know if I'd say borderline. I think some people would just say she is OP. But because there is, you know, because there are counterplay options right now, she's not, you know, going to be brought 1,000,000% of the time. So thank goodness for the ban system, and thank goodness for Warden, because without those options, you think the TDM meta is bad now. Woo! Oh boy. Jackal, not as efficient in the roam clear in terms of Dokkaebi and Lion, so that's why it's kind of like, okay, why would you track down one person with the feet scanner when you can track down, supposedly, you know, in a lot of instances, the entire enemy team, right? Potentially, with Dokkaebi, and certainly with Lion if you already know where they are with drones. So yeah, that's the main reason Jackal is just kind of like, great solo queue character, not so much good in terms of competitive design. Hibana took a hit after attacker repick because she, you know, she was all encompassing, right? In case they went basement, you could have the hatch play. But for the most part, when you can pick exactly what you want for the site, Hibana is good for hatches. Hibana is good as a secondary kind of hard breach. Okay, we're going to get the main wall. Hey, I'm going to go around back and I'm going to get something else. I'll get like the con wall. I'll get the garage walls, clubhouse, for example, right? Instead of the, you know, Ace does the main take, Hibana goes out and does something else. Really good for that. Really kind of like fun, you know, flex support hybrid kind of character that can still gun on the free speed rating with a decent primary and a machine pistol and flashes. Really good, you know, fun playmaker. Great for hatches, right? That's her thing. She can destroy all the hatches on bank basement by herself. One character. That is hugely significant. She can get both the front hatches. She can get both the back hatches all on her own. That opens up so many options for you on so many different sites. Any sites that are hatch dependent, Hibana is your girl. So that's pretty much her thing. And it's not, you know, going to be used all the time. She's not going to be the main hard breach for the wall, but she's still really good. Capitao, some people aren't going to agree with this one. Capitao actually doesn't really have as high of a pick rate as you might think in comp, because right now the TDM meta is just so heavily allocated around dealing with the aggressive roam clear that Capitao doesn't really, you know, contribute too much to that particular aspect of the game, right? Dokkaebi and Lion do a little bit more. You got to think, guys, right? You only have 5 operator slots. So if you're trying to deal with a roam clear, how is, you know, Capitao going to help you do a top-down roam clear on bank? Right? Like, so for more utility bunkerish kind of sites, that's not to say that Capitao is bad. He still has leverage. He's still great. Another example for Clubhouse, dealing with the rafters players. He clears those guys, gets the can opener on the wall, goes underneath, boop, fire goes down, clears the guy off of rafters. You can get garage control. Stuff like that. Good for site hits, has the smoke, has the fire. But in terms of just, you know, the early stage of the game, it's kind of tough to get things going for him. You know, there's certain things that have to kind of be met, certain kind of priorities that have to be met. So not a bad character, just not a character that's going to be used 100% of the time. I had not eaten food, and now we are back. Okay. Spoiler alert, if you were paying attention towards the beginning of the video. Boop. Look. Listen. Another ranked operator, right? Put him on a window, put him on an upside down rappel. You can probably get a free pick. That free pick will go a long way. In a competitive environment, though, there's just not really much of a reason to bring Blackbeard, like, ever. His guns are not good, aside from the SR-25, which is, like, it's one of the, like, you know, as far as DMRs are concerned, it's not amazing. And his AR just is bad by every metric. He's going to have frag grenades in the next patch. If correct me if I'm wrong. It's been a while since I did the frag grenade video. I don't remember them all right off the top of my head. But yeah, I mean, like, he's kind of a gimmick character, right? Why would you bring Blackbeard when you can bring so many other characters? He just doesn't really, like, bring or offer a lot to the table, especially that Osa doesn't. So yeah. If you want to get that free pick on an upside down rappel, go ahead and bring Blackbeard. But for the most part, it's like, right. Okay. So I've been ignoring this tier a little bit because for whatever reason, based off of kind of the way that things sort of shook out on attack, this is where a lot of your vanilla characters are going. And I think that has a lot to do with just the design fundamentals of the game and how it works. They pretty much covered every base that they could for attack when the game first dropped. And so that's where we get into Buck. So Buck is really, really good right now. Really versatile character that can do a number of different jobs. He is a great flex character, but he can also play as an entry frag as well. His gun is exceptionally good with a high rate of fire and pretty decent damage output. And he has the verticality aspect. Not only can Buck go above with his verticality, he can hit from below. He can go through adjacent walls to the side, through a floor, and then a wall next to it. He's just really, really good at manipulating map geometry in ways that other characters can't, especially from a distance, especially safe. Plus, he has a Gon 6, which gives him a little bit of a destructive edge in terms of getting rid of stuff like, the occasional bulletproof camera or a deployable shield, stuff like that. He really doesn't have any particularly strong glaring weaknesses aside from the utility department. And even then, he can bring can openers or flashbangs, depending on whether you want to play like a flex roll to open up a different wall somewhere, get a different entry point, or to bring stun grenades. So Buck is really, like, honestly, in my opinion, the best solo queue character in the game right now. He can do so many different things. And knowing Siege, like, I know they're probably going to take something away from him pretty soon, the moment that I open my mouth. So sorry about that in advance. I'd like him to stay that way, though. I don't think he's a broken character. I think he's just a really fun and good character, and that's good. Next up, Sledge. Sledge gets hit over the head with a Nerf bat a lot. He lost the SMG-11 a while ago. He doesn't have really big zoom scopes on his gun, but I mean, he's a 3 armor too. People treat that as a nerf, in certain respects it is. But he's still like one of the premier verticality operators right now. Nobody does it like him. Nobody has the precision and the ability to, really like tackle a problem in terms of verticality quite like Sledge does. He is the most direct. He is the most efficient verticality operator in the game in terms of, if you want like one specific hole, make a hole here, boom, 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 right? One action, it makes a big hole. That's exactly what you need. So Ram is better for covering like a large amount of stuff. Sledge is better for covering a small amount of stuff. He is very good at that, and his gun is really good, and he has frag grenades. Can't say a lot of bad things about Sledge. Really good entry frag, really good flex entry hybrid. He can do it all, okay? He's just one of the best characters in the game right now. Good for pretty much any situation you throw at him. You can throw a Sledge in the mix and be okay with it. Thatcher's kind of the same way, although it is a little bit more dependent on what the defense is doing. The Thatcher kind of fell out of the meta ever since the secondary EMPs kind of started to get thrown into the mix. But the thing is, he's still really good. You know, like nobody is going to be as good at opening the wall or helping to open the wall as Thatcher. And not to mention, he can open the wall in ways that people with secondary EMPs can't. So there's some situations where you can use a Thatcher to EMP stuff through map geometry that you normally wouldn't be able to. A good example of this is includes some of the Cade stick positions for Oregon basement. You can throw Thatcher grenades literally like on the ground above the map geometry there, and the EMP radius is so big that it'll go through. So he's really good for opening the wall. And also just in his own right, there's nothing wrong with just taking the EMPs and just throwing them into a room, right? Like before you start clearing it, like throw it at a doorway, throw it into a room, and then you'll just guarantee that you're going to be, you know, for the most part, okay. You're not going to have to deal with a Fenrir, a Capcan, right? He disables traps. Really, really good at clearing the way for his team. I know that a lot of people really just, you know, in a competitive sense, they'll only focus on the most obvious stuff, which is the wall opening. But there are situations where he is useful in that respect for being able to just get rid of, you know, all defender gadgetry. And that's something that's really nice to have. And he has great guns. The L85 is a monster and it has a 2-time scope. Thatcher's Thatcher, right? Like he's just a really good operator. Ashe is up next for the A tier. So Ashe isn't going to be brought 100% of the time, right? But she is the premier entry frag once again because Iana has lost the frag grenades. Ashe has an R4C. She has a 3-speed rating. She can bring breaching charges if she has to for verticality. She is she's just a very, in terms of entry fragging, she is a versatile entry fragging, right? She's good at what she does. She has a job. And that's pretty much the job, and she sticks to it. You know, there's not a lot of deviation, but there are situations where the breaching round is useful, not just for giving you new entryways in terms of, you know, taking attacks, but also in terms of getting rid of stuff like Azamis, deployable shields, bulletproofs, right? So she can take the gunfights she needs to for her team, and she can get rid of a piece of utility along the way. That's good. Thermite, one of the more premier hard breachers, you know, it has been for a long time. We kind of saw Ace like brought pretty much 99% of the time in comparison, but now Thermite's kind of making a comeback because we can actually open the wall now without Maverick. Thermite, you know, you go for an exterior wall, and he's just the best for exterior walls, right? When it's safe and you can pull it off, you get the exterior wall open with the Thermite, you EMP it, and he blows up the most amount of stuff faster than anybody else. Really difficult to bandit trick or Cade trick. Pretty much impossible to Cade trick, I think, under most circumstances, just because of how fast the gadget actually works. So he will get the wall open. Really big effing hole coming right up. That's Thermite. Good gun. He's the hard breach. What else is there to say? Montagne. Montagne's been getting a ton of competitive play, or at least a lot more competitive play than I think a lot of people may have predicted. Montagne is, you know, kind of in the similar vein with Ying. Like, you bring him when you just really want map control. He is a free drone, right? He is a unkillable drone that just walks around. He puts the shield up, and then he's the information guy. He just gives you information, and he gives you map control, and that's really powerful. Really, really good information gatherer, bulwark for the team. Shields are kind of cringe right now. I'm not going to lie. I'm not really a fan of how a lot of shield mechanics work in Siege at this moment. But as far as other FPS games are concerned, I think that Siege did a better job with shields in other games. And so I understand why, you know, Monty is the way he is. I am looking forward to see what they do with Year 9 in terms of the shield rework then. There's going to be a lot of stuff to talk about there, and potentially, you know, more videos for me to make, which is always good for my bottom line. So yeah, Monty, I mean, you guys kind of get it. You're not going to bring him 100% of the time, but he is good for, like, I want this piece of map control. Like, I want Clubhouse Rafters. By all means necessary, I will bring a Montagne, and I will ping the guys on the rafters, and then my teammates will shoot them. Twitch has kind of been turned into a support character recently, which is interesting. I really do think that was the goal in terms of the F2, nerfing the crap out of the F2. Like, I get it. I think there were ways to... I think there were other things they could have done. I'm not a fan of the way that they handled the F2. I think keeping the foregrip on it was fine. It was already a difficult... Like, it was already a pretty much... optional gun to use anyway. Now, when you compare it to the 417, it's like, okay, there's literally just no point in not running the 417, which I think switch ups like that, I think changes like that are kind of silly in a game like this. I don't think there should be options in a video game like this where they are just useless. Like there is just no point in using it. But I understand why they did it. They want Twitch to be a support character, not an entry fragger. They want her to be a flex support that's responsible for utility, and the gadget is good for that. If you combine Twitch with an IQ, you can pretty much just disable the entire trap setup that the defense has. She's really good at countering the trap meta. She can get rid of camera intel. She is a hard mirror counter, which is really powerful in its own right. So yeah, and she has a million drones, kind of like Brava, right? So it's like super useful information gather, and can deal with like she counters a couple of really strong characters. Blitz is weird. There's just a lot of situations where, like, why would I bring a Blitz when I can bring a Montagne? Blitz is good if you want to go for that really direct kind of super fast entry on a piece of map geometry that you really want. I think the Oregon Blue Bunker Blitz take all the time. That's probably the most popular, the most famous way to get leverage out of Blitz that most people think of. And it makes sense, right? It's like confined map geometry. Blitz is just, he's such a pain in the ass to deal with in a 1v1 in confined map geometry, but he really struggles in anything that requires team play, and that's kind of what makes it difficult for him to work, right? But at the right place at the right time, and Blitz is just a serious pain in the ass, and that's why he still kind of gets picked every once in a while. IQ, I almost considered putting here, but the reason that I didn't is because I've seen her played at night at Atlanta, and I've seen her get brought to deal with defender setups, gather information super quickly through really big maps like Nighthaven, big maps like Bank, and eventually I think she's going to be useful on Lair too. I don't know what's going to happen with Lair in terms of the competitive rotation, but IQ, the range of the scanner is what makes her. The range of the scanner, that 20 meter distance, I'm pretty sure, last time I checked, that is really significant. You can tell if the bomb site is on the bottom floor all the way from the top of the building. Like, if you're playing ranked and, like you're having a really hard time trying to find the bomb site, you can bring an IQ. Her guns are good. She's going to have frag grenades again pretty soon here, which is really cool. So honestly, you might even just bump her up a little bit more based off of that because of the destructive utility. IQ gets too much crap, right? Like IQ gets way too much flack in my opinion. She is good at what she does. That's a line that I throw out, pretty often in Siege, but that is kind of the case with IQ. And she does it really well. She kind of she needs a couple of different pieces kind of working around her to get things going. But that off chance kind of ability to really deconstruct the entire defense's setup just, without even having to go in the building or drone anything is super powerful sometimes. Fuze is kind of weird. He kind of fell off, man, which is kind of a shame. It's just not like we're not in Utility Simulator anymore, right? Like we're dealing with traps. We're dealing with really aggressive roams. His 3 armor rating just kind of makes it difficult. It's really tough. Like his gun is super good, don't get me wrong, but like the gadget is slow. It takes a while to get going. It telegraphs. There's just it's really good for dealing with super bunker heavy setups. Don't get me wrong, you can put the Fuze charge through a hard breach wall, which is really good. I think that a good Fuze player can make some plays that are really difficult to anticipate and play around. Good rank character, but for competitive purposes, kind of nah. And then finally we got Glaz. Also kind of fell off, right? The smoke plant isn't really as useful as it used to be. Plus you got Warden on the board. Why would you go for a smoke plant when you can just bring a Grim, a Gridlock, a Ying? You can just spam utility on the site, and then you just, then you play for the post plant. Glaz is really good, depending on the map. Really good on Chalet, where you can do the lawn hit from Big Garage or the Snowmobile Garage walls outside. But aside from that, if you don't really have the geometry working in your favor, it's kind of tough to make Glaz work, even with all the stuff that he has. Kind of a one-trick pony in that sense. Not a bad character, but, kind of shares the same spaces with a lot of these characters where it's just sort of like, not bad, but like, there's a lot of things that have to be done in order to, make that happen. That's why I say, can bring value under certain conditions, which is relatively accurate. So this is my attacker tier list for Deep Freeze, which we can't play yet. I don't know, guys. I'm kind of worn out with the whole content creator give thoughts on company doing things. I don't work at Ubisoft, dude. I can't make it come out any faster. I can't what? I don't know. It's just kind of, this is the gaming industry now, and like people hate it. I am very well aware of how much everybody just freaking hates gaming now. I don't know why you play video games. Like, do you like them or not? I don't know. I genuinely don't know anymore if anybody likes video games. And I don't like, whatever. I mean, like, this is gaming in 2023, and I wish I could fix it myself, but I can't. And I think Ubisoft should communicate more. I think that Ubisoft needs to, you know, really get ahead of this stuff before you just like release a patch the day of, and then you're like, nah, JK, and then people download it on Xbox, and then they can't play Siege anymore because there's like mismatch code, like file crap going on the Xbox. Excuse me. That is crazy. Okay, like that is a massive, major screw up, and I'm just really kind of I don't know what happens to cause that to happen. It's not okay. It needs to not happen. And different people at different departments are responsible for different things. That's, you know, the frustrating part is that people tend to like, you know, they block every company now, right? All companies ever, and even, you know, especially gaming companies, they just like they put them all in like a big giant monolith, and it's like, dude, like, I don't know. There's corporate overhead that needs to be done, but I don't work on the 50th floor, so like, what the hell do I know? I'd like to play Deep Freeze today, but I can't. So, yeah, this is my attacker tier list. Let me know what you guys think, and let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments that I should not read, because my manager is telling me that it's bad for me, so I should probably stop doing that. Okay, thanks for watching. Take care.